Hello, 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 everyone. Mike Arnold here, co-founder of Fast Trading Partners, along with Bob Iacchino. Hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend, or it might already be over for you, so have a peaceful rest of your evening. But I appreciate everybody who gets to tune in live or watched on the replay. Always surprised that people are tuning in live to listen to me on a Sunday afternoon when there's probably better things to do, but at least you're prepping for the markets. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Patrick. Hey, AB. Hey, AB, do you live in the desert? Because you got a nice saguaro cactus. I used to live in Scottsdale for years. Love it out there. Trying to get back there. What's this mean for the market? You mean the Senate, the bill that just passed the Senate with I don't think much in the short term. Not much in the short term. Again, everything's going to still be trading off of the more important numbers coming out. And we'll get to those in a minute. Good evening, Anissa. Hey, Davey. So, we got a bunch of the regulars here. Again, some people hiding behind the scenes. Again, if you're hiding behind the scenes, don't be afraid to type into the chat. All right. By the way, I did record the Futures Edge podcast with Bob Iacchino and Jim Iorio on Friday. That should be dropping tomorrow, probably latest by midday. Hopefully, we can get it out a little earlier than that. So I would appreciate if you would tune into that and watch it when you have a chance. Again, not just me, but overall watch the podcast. But you got to watch the episodes I'm on especially. So that's where it sits. All right, let's take a look at what's going on. But before we do, real quick, if you're new here, please do consider subscribing, ringing that bell, and hitting the like button. Longer term subscribers, leave some comments and like the videos. All right, that's out of the way. That is out of the way. This week is back end loaded. Memory from your visit to Phoenix. Oh, that's very nice, AB. So tomorrow, nothing. Tomorrow is nothing. It's only short-term headlines that roll across the screen. So that's really going to be the driver tomorrow. There's no key numbers. We have a little earnings, but we'll take a look at that in a second. Tuesday, minor things. We got consumer inflation. This isn't going to be a big driver. These are very minor. Business optimism index out very early. Economic optimism, IBD, Investors Business Daily. Minor because why? It's especially minor because everything's going to be focused on Wednesday with the CPI, core inflation, everything with that. Wednesday, mortgage is going to be minor just from where we stand with housing, but everything's going to be keying off of these inflation numbers on Wednesday before the open. So that's very important. Then Thursday, little less important, but also potentially can shift things, sentiment in the markets, PPI. PPI Thursday before, and then you got continuing jobless claims and initial land. We have Patrick tasked with the 1456K. Is that number correct, Patrick? To make sure to hold me to the number I state, because why is that number important? That's the one that statistically, and it's not that absolute number, it's based off a percent increase from the low prints. But when you see that, and the print over 1456 would be that print that would trigger that necessary percent increase to have a very reliable recession indicator. We already have reliable inflation indicators, albeit understated because they keep redoing them. If we go back to the way they were calculated in the late 70s, early 80s, our inflation would be massively higher according to the numbers. But that's Thursday. And then Friday, consumer sentiment preliminary. It'll be interesting to see that. So that's right after the open. So we have the week backloaded. Just to recap, pretty mixed day on Friday. So that's going to be interesting. I did record the sector overview. I still have to process it. So watch for that. I mean, you can easily watch it. It should be out in an hour, hour and a half this evening. If you don't want to tune into it, watch it tomorrow morning. It's not going to shift a ton of what you do, especially, but you can tune in. I'll get that out as soon as possible after this. 75 basis points favored by 68%, 50 basis points by 32%. So we're going to keep seeing if that's going to climb or lower, especially with the CPI and PPI numbers coming out this week. And pay no attention to this line, just this absolute value of 41.11. 41.11 for positive gamma territory. We'll call that back up, but right now we're at 41.46. So we're in positive gamma territory. Earnings for this week. I know a lot of people follow Palantir. That's going to be minor for market moving, but a lot of people follow that. So that's going to be something to look at. After the close on Monday, not much that's market moving, really. There's not a lot that's market moving. There's lots of stuff that people will like to be in, like Palantir, Coinbase, Roblox. What else? I'll be looking at stuff like Cisco and Ralph Lauren for the consumer point of view. Let's see. I'm just looking to see what else is coming up. I'll definitely check in on Disney after the close on Wednesday. I'm just seeing if there's anything else that's really, I mean, we're going to, of course, see Rivian. They announced layoffs, especially with, it's interesting with Tesla, too, where they're sitting when we got that stock split vote that happened. But I'm going to start watching for some of these bigger pullbacks. It looks like we could also get some more selling in Tesla with the insider sales. Let's see. Hey, Kalani. It's hard to be bearish when there's so many double bottom setups. It is, and I'll go over. In the vault or 3-ring binder. You know, again, Patrick is the official. I'm putting you in charge of the written communications, Patrick. All right, so that's where we sit now. I'm going to do more of a macro perspective, and this will tie in with the Futures Edge Jim Iurio podcast. Right now, daily cycles have got out of the top, but trying to turn back up. The challenge is weekly cycles are still pinned to the top. I'm watching at some point this week for a weekly pullback. Is that to new lows? No. In order for me to get, but why is that not to new lows? We have the daily rotation zone. So even a pullback, even my first key levels is 4090 to 4100. Get below there, you're into the daily rotation zone. This is support. Support 2 is the prior breakout area. And you have a pretty significant level right about 4020. Key close, rapid move away. This close just beyond it, little gap open, rapid move away. We could fine tune it a little, but it's 4020 to 4000. Key close on that, bar that slices through there. You have some other past stuff way back here on the chart, but we don't need to waste our time on that. But that's what I'm watching. That would just be a pullback to the daily rotation zone, and that would actually be a fairly substantial pullback from the highs if we don't even make new highs Monday, Tuesday. That would be actually over a 3.5% pullback. Where can I get a little more bearish? Well, then we break down through there. Major support, and these are static levels. Why? Because they're not changing. Dynamic is the rotation zone. Dynamic are the harmonics. Those are the blue lines. Why? Because if we make a new high, they will move up with it. Static is based off of price action in the past. That's not going to change. You're not going to get like this prior. You see this breakout level right here? Key support area. Resistance. Resistance. Broken. Retested, confirmed support. This level's not going to change. We get a close below that. Tips me more significantly bearish, and then a major close below about 38.40. Why? It's a 62.5. And that tips the odds and statistically. Now, if we start getting moves like this, I will ramp up the short-term bearishness. But orderly pullbacks, even if we get a bigger red bar like on CPI Wednesday, there's a lot of support in here. And that would take us from weekly cycle tops and a pullback. Now, the first major area I'm going to key off of, we've had this pretty orderly channel up. It's not a wedge. It's not narrowing. So, and the daily rotation zone is about 4108. Start breaking below that, but you're in the support at 4090. So this is a key support area. Key support. So that's what I'll be watching for should we break down tomorrow. Let's see. We got some more. Does the monthly look like a right shoulder from... Oh, we'll get to Tesla in a second. Actually, I'm sort of bullish here, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, I know we're in a rising peak inflation, and you can tune in to hear me on the podcast because this actually favors still some higher prices. Yes, we are against key resistance and can get a pullback. But we break out. If we break out above this key resistance, I'm actually targeting returns to the 200. And this might not happen this week. We could get a pullback and then break out in the next couple weeks. Why? We don't have, after this CPI and PPI and preliminary sentiment, we have some final sentiment numbers, but we don't have a lot. August is naturally thinner. There's a lot of people who do their vacations before school starts. And we don't have a lot until Jackson Hole. And it's already been shrugging off the Fed. So I'm sort of giving you my more macro thoughts. Now, we still got to trade price action. However, when I start seeing, even if, all right, what I could actually see is a year-over-year CPI being higher than expected, but month-over-month being better than expected. So we could get a pullback, then a bounce as the market keeps shrugging stuff off. We're in shrug-off mode. Again, that's why I've been calling it go-go gadget mode. The market, one of the things I've learned from doing this for, 30 years at this point is, hold on, throat a little parched. When the market starts shrugging off news and just gets into the, hey, even on short-term stuff like Friday, we had that pullback, right? We had a pullback. Shrug off. And then we ended up into a balanced day. This is pretty much a balanced day after that. When I start seeing like this, hey, we're shrugging off bad news. We could get bad news and the market could then shrug it back off and continue a little higher. Does that mean I'm long-term bullish? No. Not at all. But short term, I'm going to gauge this pullback. This pullback is going to be very telling. Again, why am I expecting a pullback? Because cycles can stay pinned for a little longer, but eventually they roll over, and it's the strength of the down move that will help us gauge it. A strong down move tips me more bearish. A weak down move and we hold against some of these key levels and then rotate back up, keeps me minorly bullish, at least through into possibly September, through into Labor Day. And we're back from a consumer sentiment point of view. There's there's three major gauges of that. You got the IBD, you got the Investors Intelligence one. They're actually from bearish mode back tipping into neutral mode. So we've got out of our overall bearish mode back into neutral mode. So we've worked off this major oversold condition. But generally, based off where we are, we might not see a big tip over just yet. We might see the bigger tip over in September. So we still get to trade price action. But I'm being very observant of where we pull back to this week. Hey, late to the party. Happy Sunday. You probably haven't missed much. So this last week, a pausing bar on the weekly. This is, again, we've had a nice 3-week run-up against the 50-week. I'm expecting more a pullback, but a pullback, an orderly pullback, is not necessarily long-term or medium-term bearish. An orderly pullback can reset things for one more ramp up. Remember, if we look at even the macro, bigger statistics stuff, if we go from the highs back in beginning of January to these lows, you even statistically, we could run up to this 43.73 without a major close above there and then roll over. So is there more upside before another rollover play? Yes. Potentially. I see a lot of people getting bearish. It doesn't mean we can't be bearish. I'm very bearish long term, but we have to take things, and this is sort of the gauge of, are we done with this ramp up bull mini counter trend rally yet? And I'm not so sure we're done with it in the larger term perspective just yet. I think we're done with it or closer to the end on the short term perspective, but not on a long term perspective. So the key areas I'm just watching on any pullbacks, there it is, 41. You could go 4107 to 4100, then below that, this 4090 area. Anything back there with no news tomorrow, I'll watch for potential reversal patterns going in for a bounce into Monday morning. The only thing that would make me question that is if we got a European pullback move below 4090 with some key closes. NASDAQ, again, we are stalling out against the harmonic here, this 13,363. Cycles at the top on the daily, cycles at the top on the weekly, just in front of this 50-week, and to the prior breakdown zone. So this is major resistance. So again, same thing, watching for the pullback. This is a little overextended. So my pullback level, and this just isn't for tomorrow, is about 12,990 to 13,000. For overnight and tomorrow, my support is about 13,090 to 13,100. We drop below that, then I'm targeting this 13,000 essentially. On a rally up, I'm just watching for a retest of the highs for both the S&P and the Nasdaq. Dow, pretty much a sideways move. So this is working off the overbought conditions, still at the top. So we could see a bit more of a pullback as weekly cycles in the Dow still at the top. But so far on a daily basis, this is moved sideways, and we had a potential double, which has turned into really a triple at this point. I'm pulling these off. You can still use those as targets, but my overnight support is about 32,350, then below there. Minors 32,200, majors 32,050. On a rally, we have pretty key resistance right here, about 32.8, then above there 32,938 to 33,018. Russell, again, against the harmonic. I have to bump these up. We don't have a strong pausing bar yet, but above this 1918, 1936 minor, and then major area for me, at least in the short term, is 1955. Pullback, key support 1887. A break below that, my major support's back at 1845 to 1848. DAX, remember we finished the double, got this little pullback. So overnight, and if we break down below Friday's lows, I'm watching about 13,470 to 13,500 as support. And then once we break below that, if we do, then I'm keying my major supports coming in about 13,334. To the upside, now we have a decent pausing bar. Again, we have cycles at the top on the daily with the DAX, so I am focusing more so on a pullback sooner rather than later, and weekly getting to the top but not yet rolling over, and we tap the other side of the weekly rotation zone. So the DAX, I'm a little more short-term bearish for the rollover before our markets. We'll take a look at Upstart. Remember, we have the massive weekly head and shoulders. We've got this pullback. I'm going to be watching for some key support. If we do break below about 119.04, remember the stop's way below here. I've said what it is before, but my next pullback level would be again 118. That does not invalidate this very long-term pattern. Cycle's getting to the bottom on the daily, but still at the top on the weekly. So we could see some choppy to downwards still trading on this before it puts in another low pattern. And then it would be another short-term play to the upside. So I'm not really doing anything. I'm going to gauge to see where we sit tomorrow morning. Crude weekly triggered a double top. I am watching, though, with cycles at the bottom on the weekly hitting oversold condition. And looks like we might be setting up for a weekly divergence. And daily cycles at the bottom and coming down to oversold condition. I'm watching for a bounce. But my area of resistance and bounces for me are to be sold, especially on stronger rallies. My minor rally would be about to 1956. And then major would be about 93.50. And then major would be about 96.50. So that's what I'm watching for. Also, that's why I'm cautious with some energy stocks right now. Natural gas, a break back above about 840. Other than that, key support 750. So it's either the breakout or a breakdown play, especially since daily cycles are turning up, but weekly cycles are at the top. So still watching with patience on natural gas. Gold, keeping an eye on the potential longer term bottom. However, we do have a potential double top here, a close below 1770. We got 1702, 1745, and 1735. I would love to this to trigger and it pull back to a key area and then a new buy signal, especially with daily cycles rolling over. And weekly cycles not yet at the top, but stalling out against this pretty key support becoming resistance. So I would like to see the pullback because that would give some decent entries. And we have this little mini divergence, so I am being patient with gold. Now, going into the CPI and PP90 numbers, that could be the new ignition. So going to keep an eye on this over the next couple days very closely. But higher high, lower high RSI with cycles turning down. So going to be watching to see how much it does pull back over the next couple days. Dollar index trying to get a bottom, but we're back at cycle tops on the daily. And I see we'll get to some other stocks in a bit. Weekly cycles not yet in a bottom. I need it to get back above about 107 before I get into more aggressive short-term bullish mode. VIX will just check on tomorrow morning. US dollar, Japanese yen. I'm watching for more of a substantial topping basis forming. But my key area that I'm keying off of with this is if we get a close back above 136, then I'm targeting a possible return to about 138.20. Other than that, euro is still caught within this. My breakdown area is 101.20. My breakout area is roughly about 102.50. Other than that, it's just within consolidation. Jim did put out a bearish play on that, so if you want interested in that, tune into the Jim Iorio Futures Ed podcast, which will drop tomorrow. I'm going to keep plugging it. Bitcoin, even with this substantial market rally, sort of stalling out. If it can get something on, still 25K's major resistance, but I'll get really edgy if we break below 22,600. And then my support levels coming in at about 21.6, 21.5 to 21.6. And keep in mind, I am overall long-term bearish. Tesla triggered a double top on Friday. Gap down, no gap fill, double top triggered. So I am targeting minor 849, then 837, then the bottom of the rotation zone 821. This was very orderly, strong. It looked like either Elon or some other insider selling. You can see here just constant selling pressure. This should remind you from those selling days back from months ago. This is a very similar pattern. Don't know if it's done or if it's going to resume, but I'm keeping an eye on it, especially with that double trigger. Does that mean major long-term bearish just yet? No. Long term, I am still bearish, but we have a lot of support to pull through and or chew through, and this pullback would just be to the daily rotation zone. I will start watching for a more substantial topping pattern coming up, but I don't have one. We do have weekly cycles at the top. That's why I'm gauging this pullback again on Tesla. To the upside in Tesla, should the selling not resume. By the way, the pattern is not invalidated. At this point, we have not hit stop reduction. So the pattern's not invalidated until above close above 917. And essentially close above right there, then it would be for the gap fill, but you will get an earlier gap potential play up there if it does rally back. Now keep in mind on any rally going into tomorrow, I'd be watching the 1 hour rotation zone because the breakdown level is your 878 to about 886 is your first area of key resistance. What about a lotto ticket on Upstart earnings on 8.8? Can you provide your 2 cents? Besides, I think I saw also, was there some Upstart? I mean, you got the short interest in this. This is still I mean, you don't have an extra rotation in there, so you still do have a potential double bottom in here. Now, short term, I do have a couple little areas I'm watching, but if this does trigger a short squeeze, it can also trigger a run to the upside, and we're still at shrugging off valuations phase. So I'm just looking to see here. Now, the only thing that gives me pause is where it cycles at the top. But earnings are going to trump that. You start getting, though, above 36.42, I'd be more inclined for the breakout levels. I don't have, somebody have the move on here. Let's see. Thought I saw something in here. I mean, yeah, I forgot to add 36% short. Is that short interest, or you don't have a 36 short position on Upstart? Yeah, if it's Larry, we do get we have more selling. I don't know if you'll reach that just yet. You still got it's always interesting timing with back to Tesla. It's always interesting timing. Let me finish with Upstart, then I'll jump back to Tesla. Upstart, your key resistance, and this is all going to be based off the earnings, but it's 29.50 and key breakdowns 22.58. If they have it all good or at least not horribly bad earnings, I could see a pop to the upside in this based off of the way everything else has been trading. Yeah, Larry, that was announced a while ago that he's leaving. If I had to bet, I'd bet on an upside, which means they'll probably gap down, but I'd bet on an upside play on Upstart. It gets really interesting, though, if you do gap above and hold above about 40.60, you are into this, it's not an advanced clear pass move, but you don't have a lot of stopping points up until about 52. You had a question about what was the question about, hold on. Was there a different thing here? I'm not seeing. Was there some other pattern I was missing on Tesla? I don't see one just yet. The only pattern was that double top. In a bigger picture on a weekly, we don't have a massive selling pattern just yet. Can you watch US 100? Thank you for being here. This is not one I go. Yeah, your key support on US 100. Your major support's coming in about 12,881. And then your next support level is on, these are levels I'd watch for once we have a top also. It's the same as the other things. NASDAQ 100. You get your pullback 12,881 and 12,535. Longer term, I'm still watching for this also to return to its 200 before the next major tip over play, or the vicinity of the 200, I should say. And you know what? I'd actually probably pull that in front of it with that 50% harmonic, about 13,890 to 13,983 after a pullback move, with a stop raise about 13,660. And as long as you don't get a major close, I'd say back below about 12,475 to 12,5, that would just be an orderly pullback in your US 100. Hey, Josh. Hey, Eric. When you find a nice setup, but it's kind of overbought, what would you do? Well, do I have? It then depends on my time frame and everything else. So, like if I was playing this off the daily, would I be chasing it here? No. Cycles are at the top on the daily. Cycles are at the top on the weekly. It's into the weekly rotation zone. You do have a gap potential play over here. Another one of Kathy. Is she? I think she's still in this, isn't she? I'd be watching, especially with cycles at the top and where the market sits, I'd be watching for a pullback. And your major support is about 67.50. So I'd be watching for a pullback and then a buy signal somewhere in the daily rotation zone to the 4-hour rotation zone. I would not chase it higher at this point. I do not mind missing a trade. I'd rather not chase something with potentially poor reward to risk. Now, if we do get that resumption of trend move, and we keep with a junk rally, remember something like ARK. Why am I bringing this up? Am I bullish on ARK long term? No. We still have a short term buy pattern in there. We can still hit this, essentially this major breakdown zone and the first target for the double. So even with a pullback, you know, your key levels to invalidate that pattern are a lot lower. And you do have it's climbing a channel. So, I mean, we could still see that pullback before a resumptive move higher, and that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for a play in DocuSign. That's the kind of thing I'd rather, with the markets be where they are, get that pullback, then a new buy signal, then a play higher. Again, I'd rather miss a trade than chase a trade. Yeah, I didn't think that was you. Hopefully not. So that's where, again, if I was going to favor something based off these markets, I'd be playing for the squeeze higher. You're welcome. Yeah, we'll have to watch. Again, it looked like insider selling. It looked like, hey, just execute these orders. It could have been Larry. So again, he doesn't have to sell everything because he's leaving the board. And it could be strategic selling, but we could see some more selling pressure, and we have that short-term double. And remarkably, you know, you watch the massive call buying that happened for the past couple of years. It mysteriously disappears right before significant insider selling. So it's like things get juiced up, and then all of it, and not saying anything, but it's very suspicious. Hey, John. You are welcome, George. You have a great rest of your weekend. Hey, Kalani, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Again, give a shout out to Kalani for the super chat. You're welcome, Nisa. Is Amazon form a dojo? A dojo? You mean a doji? That would not be a doji. Again, Amazon. I'd be watching for a short-term top. It's up in a topping area. So I would not be. This is another one I would not be chasing higher against the 50-week in between this key area, at least off the last swing. Gonna gauge this on the pullback to see strength, especially with cycles at the top. Your first level of support is back at 136. Where you got to start getting concerned on the closing basis is below about 134. On an intraday basis, if it breaks below about 132, 40. Because then I'd be targeting at least a partial gap fill. Yeah, this is not a doji. This is not a doji. This is a doji. This is not a doji. And remember, the exact definition of is open and closed at the exact same level. You got to give that a little leeway. But this is way too much leeway. So there's lots of stuff that's overextended right now. That's why I will be glad for a pullback. And then we gauge how much we do get the pullback, which will help us really navigate the next potential push higher. All right. I think that's, what else do we have? Oh. I'd be very cautious with Palantir, by the way. At least with earnings tomorrow. Very overbought. Cycles at the top on the daily. Cycles at the top on the weekly. I would rather see what it does after earnings, and then if there's a potential play after earnings into the major reversal zone. So I would be very cautious on this. There's not a strong earnings play in Palantir. All right, with that, I'm going to call it an afternoon. I will be back here tomorrow morning. We'll have the overnight price action from the Asian and European sessions to help us navigate some more of the price action tomorrow. So up tomorrow, tomorrow's just essentially no news. So why don't you ask me that? Let's see what the price action is tomorrow night. And there's no guarantee you have to go down on Wednesday with the CPI. We could theoretically go down tomorrow and Tuesday and then bounce on the CPI. The things that I'm watching for, though, is I am getting cautious because cycles are at the top and we are in overbought condition. So for me, it's not aggressive to the long side at this point. It's conservative to long side. If there's good breakdown plays, they can be bought, they can be sold, but then it's managing those plays to the short side tightly, unless it can show some massive momentum. You're welcome, Eric. You're welcome, John. Everyone, again, have a great weekend. I'll talk to everyone later. Bye for now.